People who took revenge on their bully. What happened? My great uncle had neighbors that would throw their dog crap into his yard with a shovel. First, he talked to them about it, but they denied it and told him to F off. Next, he bagged up a week's worth of crap and put it on their doorstep, but they kept up with the shoveling. This goes on all winter. He's had to stew on this, not knowing what to do, because even though my great uncle is an a-hole, he's not going to poison the dogs. So spring rolls around and the neighbors rip out their lawn, landscape it, and truck in all new soil before laying turf. During this time, he got a nice break from the dog crap since they couldn't let the dogs walk in the grass as it was setting and had to take them on walks to do their business. For about a month, he got used to not having dog crap in his yard again, so when it came back, he remembered how pissed it made him. He's trying to figure out what to do about all this dog crap, and he realizes that there isn't any more coming over the fence. Maybe they started being more considerate? Nope, the cars are gone and it looks like they're out of town. So he heads down to the gas station and fills a couple jerry cans up with diesel. He goes into their newly finished backyard and uses the fuel to write dog crap in big huge letters that filled the yard. They came back from vacation to a few new dead spots in their lawn. About a week later, the words had really taken shape and my great uncle was confronted about the vandalism. He denied it and told him to F off. None of the neighbors said they saw anything because for the time their yard was being redone, they let the dogs crap all over the neighborhood and never cleaned it up. In the end, they had to rip up their lawn and put in new again, and they still threw crap in his yard. What is wrong with people? Story 2. In my secondary school, when you were about to leave, you'd wear your school uniform shirt on the last day and people would sign it for you. There was also an option to wear your own clothes for the last few days. So this new guy who was leaving came decked out in the best of 1980s sports fashion, wielding a permanent marker, and instead of signing the shirts of leavers, he went around scribbling on the shirts of kids who were younger. Now bear in mind we were pretty poor, and if I came home with my uniform a mess, I'd get grief because we couldn't afford to replace it. He grabbed me and scribbled all over my shirt, and somehow, using his yet unknown quicksilver powers, I grabbed the marker off him and managed to scribble not only all over his Sergio jerk windbreaker, but all over his face and neck. He punched me in the chest. I'm a girl, but it was worth it. Story 3. I hate the term bully in this context, but a former man-child neighbor had issues understanding that it wasn't okay to throw his garbage in my yard or let his drunk friends whiz on my house. When the county cops didn't do anything about numerous calls, I started bagging the garbage and throwing it on his porch. He escalated to putting rat poison in hot dogs and throwing them to my German Shepherd mix. I saw her convulsing and found 3 packages worth of hot dogs studded with pellets right along the fence. She pulled through, no worse for wear. Cops said it couldn't prove who did it. So the next time he threw garbage in my yard, which usually contained the guts or waste from his hunting and fishing, I gathered fish guts into a bag, waited until he left, and put them in the rafters of his porch, under the hedges in his yard, and finally, inside his air conditioner unit. About 3 days later, he had all the doors and windows open. The following week, he was having the carpet replaced throughout the house. Eventually, the guts had deteriorated away and the smell faded, but I think he knew I did it, because I never found trash in my yard again. Do not mess with my dogs. Story 4. When I was about 7 years old, there was a girl in the bus who would pull my hair and pick on me. I would come home crying. My parents asked the driver to move our assigned seating, but they refused. My dad asked me how I could fix the problem. I responded, "How can I do anything if I'm not allowed to hit?" As was the rule, "Dad, you're not allowed to hit, but you're allowed to not get hit." He explained what I should do and did it. When the girl sat next to me, I should put my back against the wall, my feet in her thigh, and slide her off the seat. She fell, cried, I got in trouble, and the assigned seating was moved. Problem solved. Story 5. My buddy and I pulled a prank on a bully, Adam, during the last 2 weeks of high school. We were hanging out at home playing video games, and Adam surprised us by stopping by under the guise of wanting to be friends, despite having picked on us for the better part of 4 years, and one time jabbing me with a pencil. Within about 5 minutes, he was pressuring me to write his final assignment for him, a speech for debate class. At first, I said no. I mean, what is this, some comic book cliche? What will he demand next, my milk money too? But my buddy kept winking at me, putting the pressure on and convinced me that we should do it. After some negotiation, we agreed to put together a speech for him, but only if Adam would pay us $25 and also pick up a rather elaborate dinner order from Wendy's for us to eat that night. He agreed. My buddy and I ate well that night, and we had a plan. What we actually gave Adam was a quickly, pretty poorly written, and somewhat incendiary speech about the silliness of Martin Luther King Day and how, if America really wanted to celebrate a true hero, it would instead be Joe Namath Day. I'm serious, that's what we wrote. We honestly believed Adam would read this at home, realize he'd been had, and be forced to rewrite and memorize a new speech in the wee hours of the night. Except it didn't go down that way. Imagine my surprise when Adam actually delivered that very speech in class the next day. It didn't have the memorization down, he kept referencing his papers, but he marched on. And the look on our teacher's face was just priceless. I think I wet my pants. I was giggling so hard. The other kids in the classroom were in shock. As I recall, the teacher made Adam stop his presentation. She told him to leave the classroom and she yelled at him in the hallway. As far as I know, Adam never fessed up that he hadn't actually written that paper, and I'm still not quite sure he ever really figured out just how brilliantly he'd been played. This type of revenge. No physical harm and totally his own stupid mistake, but oh so satisfying. Story 6. I was in 4th grade and had been bullied by a kid named Rocky. Swear to God that was his name. Lol. Who was in 6th grade. Anyway, he would trip me, knock books out of my hands, punch me, etc. One day out in the playground, he pushed me into the merry-go-round while it was spinning. I was rolled around inside it while people were trying to stop it. The whole time he's laughing at me. I get pulled out and I'm scraped up pretty good. Get taken to the office to get patched up. Teachers asked what happened. I told them I fell. Went back outside and saw him standing there with his buddies. I ran as fast as I could toward him and punched him as hard as I could in the face, just standing there looking at him ready to fight. His buddies told him to leave me alone and never got picked on again at school. Another one was when I was in high school. A kid sitting next to me when we were doing a history test was blatantly copying my work, as in waiting for me to start writing, staring at me as I write said answers, then writing the same answers word for word. It was a short test and I had enough time, so I went through and wrote all the wrong answers to each question. Things like adding Japan invades Germany and the United States during World War II, leading them to victory, and Adolf escaped Antarctica at the end of the war and still lives there to this day. Things that were so clearly fake that I was in shock while I watched him copy down my answers. When I got to the last question, he copied down the last question, then went and turned it in. I then erased all of my tests and redid it with the right answers. So worth it when we got the papers back. Since he didn't say anything to me about his F and my A, since he'd have to admit he was copying my answers. Lastly, not me, but a good friend of mine. Sophomores in high school, Eric, kept a Gatorade in the side pocket of his book bag for lunch every day. Just before second period would start, Eric would put his bag down in class and go to the bathroom. When he would come back, his Gatorade was always empty. This went on for about 2 weeks and no one would ever tell him who it was. When finally one day he came back from the bathroom to another kid running out of the room, retching and holding his pants. Apparently, Eric had had enough of his Gatorade being taken and had to put a few drops, half a bottle, of Visine in the Gatorade before he came to school. The kid had to be admitted to the hospital a few days later for dehydration from so much spewing up or diarrhea from the Visine. Eric finally knew who it was and no one drank his Gatorade anymore. Story 7. There was a kid named Matt in my school who, in 8th grade, had developed a rating system for the girls based on the size of their chests and kept getting away with saying gross things to them. He had been reported to the guidance counselor and faculty repeatedly, but they kept saying, "We can't do anything about it if we don't personally see it happening." Which is like, do you think he's stupid enough to do it in front of you? He also kept calling me Mimi, after the Drew Carey Show character. I was getting sick of it after a few months and fruitlessly talking to the guidance counselor about that as well. I finally realized that none of the adults were going to do anything about it. One day at lunch, he called me Mimi, and I turned around and told him, "If you're going to call me that again, you're not going to like my reaction. I don't know what I'm going to do, but you're not going to like it." Which was true. I just figured I'd react in the moment. 30 minutes later, he called me Mimi in the hallway, and I turned around and gave him a big, open palm roundhouse slap across his face. He was completely taken aback. All I had to say was, "I told you you weren't going to like it." I got suspended for a week. My parents were furious at me. However, Matt never pestered anyone again. It was totally polite from that day forward. I don't generally advocate violence, but I still feel like it was a proportional response to months and months of gross behavior on his part, especially in the absence of adults who were willing to hold him accountable. I told the administration and my parents as much when I received my suspension. I don't think you should ever go straight to violence first, but at some point it is necessary. Sometimes it's all somebody will understand, and people need to be taught that actions have consequences. An action that is necessary, though, is hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel so you wouldn't miss out on my upcoming videos. Story 8. I grew up in a small town. We had one girl everyone thought was the prettiest girl in the whole wide school. She was a mean, petty witch, truly awful. For example, my cat passed when I was in 5th grade. She sat behind me muttering about how funny it was that my cat passed away, that he was a stupid cat, that he was gone because my mom was too poor to take him to the vet, and urging me to cry. "Are you gonna cry? Are you gonna cry about it? Like a big baby? Big baby cry over your stupid cat. Everyone's gonna see you cry. You're about to cry, aren't you?" And so on. This wasn't even the meanest thing she did. She was mean to everyone. One day in 6th grade, I'd had enough. She didn't even do anything truly awful. I was just like, screw Jennifer G, and decided to do something about her. I stole one of my mom's little index recipe cards and meticulously wrote, "I stuffed my bra" in big bold letters. I stuffed that and a little gold safety pin in my jacket pocket. The next day, I carefully affixed this to the back of her pink members-only jacket just before the first bell rang. She walked around with this damn note all day. Confused as to why people were laughing at her, she screamed and screamed when she found it, and she cried. Everyone saw her cry. Story 9. Not really a bully so much, but I was working at my university in the Division of Student Life as a GA, and had worked myself into a great position where people trusted me and relied on my advice. One night, at a big party at a local university bar, I had a craving for a cigarette. I asked this group of girls if they had one, and being one to not bump straight up, I offered a coupon I had for free McDonald's fries if someone would give me one. One of the cuter girls there with a pink stripe in her hair said yes, pulled out her cigs, and I gave her the coupon. She then put her cigs back in her pocket and told me to F off after stealing my fry coupon. I was pissed off at this point and tried reasoning with her, seriously, over one cigarette. She then called over a couple of guy friends and said that I was falsely accusing her of stealing from me. And her friends all backed her up. She looked me in the eyes and said, "You shouldn't be so trusting." Fast forward to Monday. We had job interviews for the division, and I happened to be passing through replacing a computer. I also happened to see the same pink stripe in hair individual that had stolen the McDonald's coupon from me the week before in line. I went to the person conducting the interviews and told him that she was a thief and a liar. On my way out, I smiled and waved. She didn't recognize me. She didn't get the job, and the interviewer thanked me for my contribution to the interview process. Story 10. As a child, I was always much bigger than the other students in my class, both height and weight-wise. 5 foot by the time I reached 3rd grade, stopped growing forever at 5'6" by 5th grade, which made me an easy target as the fat girl by the popular boys. Weirdly, the girls never were mean to me. Anyway, in 6th grade, it reached its peak because I admittedly was this very weird socially awkward girl, which made me an easy target. This boy, let's say Dan, called me some variation of fat on the bus every single day. Why don't you just move seats, you may ask? Well, my brain was not that bright. One day I had enough. Dan called me a fatty and I almost moved forward to hit him. That made him and his friends amp it up even more the next day. That day, I lost it. Keep in mind that at this age, most boys haven't even started puberty, so Dan was a measly 4 foot something while I was at adult-sized at age 11. I put my hands on him and threw him around the back of the bus a few times until his friends pulled me off him. The next day, I was called into the office and I immediately broke down, because even though I felt vindicated, I still was afraid of getting in trouble. The principal just looked at me and said, "Okay, you can go." I was still so afraid of getting in trouble that the next day I came in and asked if she had called my mom. No, if you were in trouble, I would have made you call her yourself. Turns out Dan was being investigated for pushing another boy off the bus steps and breaking his nose, so they were trying to build a case for his aggression. I didn't even get talked to. Luckily, that fight gave me a don't mess with her reputation that carried on until high school, at which point the bullies kind of became normal humans. Story 11. In England, I'm aged 15 and I'm on a week-long course with the Naval Cadets, CCF in Portsmouth. The group had around 20 school kids from various schools. In the ship we're staying on, we have our own bunk space. Around the corner is a group of actual Navy recruits, aged a few years older than us. So one night, a bunch of the recruits invade our bunk space. They grab the 3 youngest-looking kids, which includes me. Their leader takes out a padlock and starts hitting my buddy with it. Then he asks, "Does that hurt?" And my buddy says, "Yes," to which the bully says, "Good, I'll do it some more." After a few more whacks, he starts on another kid. Asks the same question to which the reply is no, and his answer is, "I have to do it harder then." I'm next in line and I know what's coming. So when he turned to look at me, I punched him in the face as hard as I could. I was small at 15 and he was around 2 years older. Then all hell broke loose. First thing that happened was his mate shoved me off the bunk onto the floor and started jumping on me. The rest of my group laid into the recruits. They were smaller but outnumbered the recruits. Someone pulled the guy off me and I was just about to start kicking him when the MPs or security or petty officers came in and broke up the fight. We all got dragged into the commander's office and ordered, as in actual military orders, to stay out of each other's bunk space. Next day I saw the guy I punched and he had what I assume was a broken nose. I found I had acquired a bit of a reputation at school. Sometime later, as I'm walking across the schoolyard, a younger but bigger kid bumped into me. I say something along the lines of, "Hey, watch it." And he says, "Make me." His buddy comes up and drags him off saying, "Don't mess with him, he's crazy." Story 12. In high school, I had a verbal bully. He never got physical, but I would always hear about how fat I was or what I was reading. This was early, mid-90s, so manga wasn't as mainstream as it is now. He lived a few streets down and his parents knew he did it. They just didn't care. So in my junior year, a new high school opened and I transferred over. He stayed at the old school. I helped set up all the new computers and networks at the new school and graduate. The school then hired me as a computer tech, which was great because it was awesome paying for an 18-year-old. So my first year as a computer tech, and who do I see? That's right. He did something in his senior year at my old school that got him kicked out and had to repeat his junior year, so he was now a year behind me. So I'm walking through the hallways with an assistant principal. Damn, I miss him. I would have followed him to school in hell itself. Talking about what computers I was going to move, etc. Bully sees me and just starts up again like no time has passed. I just stare at him and then at the AP. He lays into my bully about showing proper respect for the faculty and staff while my bully just has this dumbfounded look on his face. It was amazing. Story 13. Well, my revenge took place years after the bullying, but let me tell you, the feeling was magnificent. I was driving home one night and got rear-ended. This took me by surprise simply because this was at 3 in the morning and I was the only vehicle in the road at this time in this area. Or so I thought. Turns out he was driving drunk, and I just so happened to have neck pains and trouble sleeping due to the traumatic event. I was able to sue him enough to pay for medical, my vehicle, and a little extra pocket money. That's what you freaking get for pushing me into the locker, Chad. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy What's the most messed up way to get revenge? Story 4 was bonkers. See you in that video.